Hi there, and welcome to the Wandering Desk podcast, the podcast about living, working, and generally hanging out abroad, wherever that might be. I'm your host, Neil Benyon. This week I have with me Alexander Woolley. Alex is from Dunblane in Scotland, and he currently lives in Poland where he teaches English. We're going to be talking about Ukraine, and specifically the city of Odessa. We cover a whole bunch of subjects, including whether it's Ukraine or the Ukraine, the existential despair of being a country situated between Germany and Russia, see also Poland, the Potemkin steps or stairs, take your pick, going to the opera, and a whole bunch of other stuff like food, transport, language, and so on. So anyway, let's go ahead and dive in so Alex and I can share with you the fruits of our ignorance. Alex, welcome to the Wandering Desk podcast.
It's nice to be here.
Well, I'm delighted to have you on board. I hope this will be the first of many, or at
hope so too.
At least 7 or something. I don't know.
Yeah, that sounds good.
I don't want to be too ambitious. So today we're going to be talking about Ukraine, but particularly Odessa. And I believe you've been there yourself.
Yeah, I was there 7 years ago. Jesus.
Right, and how long did you spend there?
Oh, in Ukraine I was there for maybe 5 weeks. In Odessa for 3 or 4 days.
Okay, so and it's just like a tourist trip, really?
Yeah, I worked at, I think, the only children's English language skiing camp in Ukraine, in Zakarpattia, that's close to Lviv, close to Romania in the mountains. And then afterwards, I went on holiday, and Odessa was one of the places I visited.
Right. Okay. So, as a backgrounder to Ukraine, Ukraine is a city of
country.
So, Ukraine is a country of 42 million people, nestled between Poland and Russia.
I'm sure they wish they weren't.
Well, actually, it's a lot like the Poles, isn't it, in the sense that they spent most of their history sort of trapped between Germany and Russia, or not trapped, just kind of squished into nothingness. It is Ukraine, and I still hear people saying the Ukraine a lot. I guess this is about prescriptivism versus descriptivism, where the Ukraine becomes okay if enough people say it anyway. But I'm told it's not a good thing to say because it implies that it's a region, and the Ukraine was correct when it was part of the Soviet Union, but now it's not. Now it's its own sort of bona fide country, so it should be Ukraine.
I think Ukraine literally means borderland, in which context the borderland would be correct in English. But I agree with you.
I just like to be one of those people that's always saying, it's not Lao, it's Laos, but actually just the opposite of what the other person just said.
I love that Laos is literally like 1 Lao, 2 Laos, and 3 Laos is the number of Laos that formed Laos.
Right, because of the tribes, weren't they? I mean, there is a strange feedback loop going on there, because I believe that, I can't even remember which way round it is, but I think the correct pronunciation is Lao, because it's the French, and then people come in and start saying Laos. So the locals start saying Laos, but they're saying Laos because that's what the visitors say, and they just want to be understood. So it's all a bit weird. Either is fine, because I can correct you, whichever one you say. I can tell you you're wrong. So any one of those is okay. So how would you describe Odessa? Because we seem to have ended up talking about Lao.
I really liked it. I was there when it was in January, so it was quite empty, but I thought it was really beautiful, I mean, it's really nicely situated on the coast, and the old town is really rather large and survives quite well. What did you think?
Well, I am actually there now, so that helps.
What do you think?
Well, I really like it. And it takes a while, I think, really to decide how you feel about a city, because especially most places that I arrive in tends to be by train, and if I can, because I just prefer traveling that way. And that gives you a very specific feel of a city. And it's not usually, if I'm honest, it's not usually a fair representation of the city, because there aren't that many cities where the area around the train station is the best part of the city. It's usually quite the opposite. So there's that. And it's not really bad or anything like that. But, now I'm sort of nestled in the center, I really have an appreciation for it. And you have a lot of this, there's a lot of sort of classical architecture, and it's a lot of good restaurants and little cafes and stuff. Because if you're spending some time somewhere, of course, that's what's important, because that's where you end up spending half your life. That and co-working spaces in my case. So I take it you went to see the Potemkin stairs then. I want to say steps, which is stairs are grander, aren't they? Steps makes it.
I would have gone with steps. And, this was something strange for me, because Odessa is a really beautiful city. And I was walking from my hostel. It was about half an hour into the center of the center, around where this area is. And I was very impressed by all of these buildings that I didn't know what they were, but they were impressive. So I guess my expectations for the Potemkin stairs they were quite high. But when I found them, I was so unimpressed that I thought that this must be another more anonymous set of stairs. And then I spent another half an hour looking for the Potemkin stairs until I came back and I compared it to some photographs, and I realized that they really were the Potemkin stairs.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I mean, it's like when you see the opera theater, I think we're going to talk about, and the opera theater is really something special, but the Potemkin stairs are stairs, we have some in my building. Actually, I'm on the 8th floor, so we have quite a lot more. And it's just stairs. I mean, they're fine, they're practical,
Yeah,
most of the time, but
it'd be tougher getting up there without them. If it was the Potemkin grappling iron and rope, then that, I don't know. Well, it certainly, you wouldn't be able to get as many people up and down, would you? It'd be quite limiting for sure. Just to give a bit of background on the Potemkin stairs. I mean, I see what you're saying. I think you're sort of saying that the stairs are like the fireplace, not the fire, and you're more interested in the fire. And this is confusing because the fireplace is the main thing. Is that what you're saying? No, I'm just putting words in your mouth.
It's very poetical, but I'm not sure what you mean.
Good, excellent. So the Potemkin stairs. I'm going to stick with stairs. They were completed in 1853, and then they were rebuilt in granite in 1933. Because when they first built them, they were in sandstone. And this is like everything. Everything's always been rebuilt. I've noticed this when you look at guidebooks, it's always like burned down in 1762 and then like burned down again in 1829. Now stairs can't burn down, but it turns out they can wear down. So there's that. But the reason, the fame of the stairs is that, well, most people know them for being captured in Battleship Potemkin, Sergei. There's something wrong there, wasn't there? I was thinking there's something wrong. Sergei Eisenstein's silent classic, which features a famous scene, and that film itself is about the mutiny on the battleship Potemkin. And then these stairs they provide a grand entrance to the city. I think a grand entrance rather than exit, I have to say, because when you stand at the top of the stairs, you can see the sea, but it's beyond like a mangle of railway and roads, and then there's some ports heading out, and it's a sort of a messy vista. It is nice, actually. It's always, and I think we all know that feeling when you stand there and you look out to sea. And I find it like I find myself naturally inhaling deeply. I feel like my lungs seem to gain capacity when I'm looking out to sea. But I think it's the entrance is the sort of the grander of the two things. And apparently most Odessans know them as the Primorsky stairs rather than the Potemkin stairs. They stick with the traditional. But one of the things they're known for is this idea that if you stand at the top and you look down, you have a sequence of stairs and then a platform, then a landing, and then another sequence, and then a landing. I think it's 10 rises in total. And when you're at the top and you look down, you just see platforms. And when you're at the bottom looking up, you just see stairs. In practice, you have to do it. You have to deliberately stand in the right place. You're not going to get caught out not going to trick you or anything. But and apparently this is deliberate. The other thing, I don't know if you've heard of this. Do you know what a Potemkin village is?
It sounds vaguely familiar, but I can't remember.
So it's actually named after the same person, because Potemkin, the battleship Potemkin, this all links together. The Potemkin stairs are named after the mutiny on the battleship Potemkin, and that was named after, I don't know, Steve Potemkin. No, it was Grigory Potemkin, a military leader in the 18th century. So that's what they're named after. Now, apparently, when Catherine the Great, Empress of Russia, came to Crimea in 1787 and travelled up the Dnieper River in Ukraine, I guess it was the Ukraine at the time, then supposedly Grigory Potemkin had fake villages assembled on the riverside, on the banks of the river, so that as Catherine the Great was going up the river, she'd be really impressed by the villages by the riverside. But then as she passed each village, they were disassembled rather, and then the people would run ahead and then rebuild another village the same. But also apparently this is either exaggerated or apocryphal or somewhere between the two, but the term stuck. So what it actually means now is a Potemkin village is anywhere that is where you have some kind of misleading facade, you have something that looks, you're tricked into thinking something is better than it is. So I guess it's like anytime there's an Olympics and then like everywhere smells of paint basically, and they just go around like applying a superficial veneer, and they just do up the bits where the Olympic officials are going to be going, the specifically the hotel and the Olympic stadia and the road between the two are pristine and everything else not so great. So yeah, that's it's a term that stuck apparently.
That is interesting. I mean, for me, it was fine. And this optical illusion you describe is kind of, in the abstract, it's cool. When you see the stairs, I have seen stairs interspersed with landings and stairs not interspersed with landings many times in my life. So
you have some basis for comparison, is what you're saying?
I do, and it's a minor optical illusion. I mean, in the Acropolis was built without any straight lines to counteract the optical illusion that things appear bigger closer to you and smaller further away. And
didn't know that.
Yeah, and it's cool. But have you seen the Acropolis?
No.
It's not what you notice. I mean, the Acropolis is really amazing, but this is a minor thing. And I feel the same with the Potemkin stairs, and especially so close to so many buildings that really are something special. Like once you go into the town, or there's a kind of stretch where you can walk that's lit by like lanterns, there's benches and trees, and that's also overlooking the sea, and that to me was something a lot prettier or more scenic than the Potemkin stairs.
Yeah, I hear you. I think for me, it's not just the stairs, it is that whole part of the city. I mean, the city itself is great. That particular part of the city, you have this, it's like the French Quarter, essentially. And you've got the Hôtel de Paris, and then you've got like a number of different French-themed restaurants and cafes. And then you have that sort of promenade, as you're saying, that runs along the top of the stairs, and the monument to Richelieu there as well. I think it's all really nice. I really like hanging around at the top of those stairs.
Yep.
That's it. That's what I do. I just hang around stairs. So I don't think I've ever talked about stairs for as long.
Yeah, I think
so
for a stair enthusiast, this is really like it belongs on the bucket list.
Well, I've only recently unsubscribed from Stair Enthusiast magazine. It was just, and reluctantly have to add, it's just you can't subscribe to everything. It turns out. So, but let's move on to another fine piece of architecture, which is the Odessa Opera and Ballet Theatre. Now, I went to this on your recommendation, so I really like the fact that you were saying how you went to Odessa and then you went like 3 times, or was it 3 times?
I think it was 2 days. Actually 4.
4 times. This to me seems so cultured. And I thought, like, I really like the idea of that, rocking up with a backpack, and then I've drawn an image in my head now. I don't know how true that is, and then going and so yeah, I followed your lead.
I think on every occasion I was by far the worst dressed person there, actually.
Right. Well, I mean, there is a dress code, isn't there? Actually, when I went there, what I found was there was no one there in a penguin suit. There was no one there in a tuxedo. The women were almost always better dressed than the men, and the most I saw from the men were people wearing suits, guys wearing suits, and that was all. I thought, well, there's a thing when you buy the tickets and when you turn up at the ticket booth as well, they tell you the dress code, and the dress code is really just no beach wear. I think it says specifically no sports wear, and the image I have in my head is like someone in shorts and like trainers and pulled up socks with a sweatband and a tennis racket. So I would quite like to go like that someday, just like that. But
they gave you incredibly reasonable guidelines, which you have chosen not to meet.
Actually, it'd be yeah.
That's like, hey guys, you have been more than reasonable. You have not inconvenienced me. However, I have chosen not to meet your requirements.
Sometimes you've got to take a stand, even a really meaningless one. I mean, all that would happen is you turn up and they say, "I'm sorry, sir, you can't come in dressed like that." You're literally wearing what we said you can't wear. Literally. This is not even postmodernist. This is not even like this postmodern idea of sportswear. You're not doing any sports in it. You're not wearing trainers because you want to go for a run. You're wearing trainers because trainers, right? No, you're actually dressed to play sports. They say you literally. I don't know why you've done this. I don't even.
This is substantially less convenient than following the rules.
It is. It is. I don't know what you got out of this. Is this some kind of joke? Is this for a podcast? What is this? So to describe the opera house anyway, the Odessa Opera and Ballet Theatre. Here we go. This was neo-Baroque style. It was built in 1887 to replace the previous one, which was destroyed by fire. So, as if to prove my point, but only prove my point because I already knew I was going to say that. You see, so the other thing was like foreshadowing. If you see that, so from the outside, thank you. From the outside, it's this big round classically thing with a fancy square frontage, and then inside you've got like the kind of the corridor, the entrance area that kind of runs round in the same shape, and then inside it's it's a horseshoe. So you've got the stage at the front, and then you've got what they call the stalls, the ground level seating. Between the stage and the seating, you've got the orchestra pit, which I didn't even know was there. I've got to say, I went in the stalls the first time and I could hear the music playing. I was thinking, are they behind the curtain? Because that'd be weird, just like playing instruments behind a curtain. That just feels like, why do that? It's like going around to someone's house to serenade someone, which we've all done apparently, and then keeping the door closed and saying, yes, I'm listening, but the door's still closed. Actually, that's probably happened a lot. I think that's more of a, this romantic notion of the serenading. It's actually kind of creepy, isn't it? I think the door staying closed would be perfectly appropriate in those circumstances. But if you've gone to watch an opera and you can hear the orchestra playing, then keeping the curtain down, no, it's not appropriate. And then actually going to find I stood up and realised, oh, there's a pit. Oh, I've heard of this. It's a pit for the orchestra, of course. So there we go. So tell me about your experience. What did you go to see?
I really, really liked it. I actually didn't know what I was going to see until I arrived, because everything was written in Cyrillic, which at that time I couldn't really understand. I think I was vaguely well enough to... I mean, it was similar enough to Latin that I could see that it was Tchaikovsky, but beyond that, nothing. And it turned out to be the Nutcracker, which I liked enough to see 3 times. I was really, really impressed by the performance and the building, and also by the way in which it was organized. You know, it was so elegant, so well put on.
Yeah, I had a similar experience. I was really, I think, first of all, impressed by the interior. It's all sort of, it's kind of gold and ivory with all of the fabric, all the seating and stuff is in red. And then you have that huge curtain hanging down at the front, which is that red embroidered with gold and whatever. But the whole experience itself was pretty special. I'd never been before. The first time at an opera and a ballet, and wasn't quite sure what to expect, and kind of dillied and dallied for a while. I was actually thinking about renting a tuxedo, and glad I didn't in the end. I would have been the only person there in a tuxedo. But actually, so I went twice. I went to see Carmen. So Carmen by George Bizet, I think, isn't it? And Swan Lake, which is... Who's that by? Is that Tchaikovsky?
That's Tchaikovsky.
Right. And Carmen was fantastic, but what I learned quite quickly was that you got to know what's going on, because it turns out when people sing in shrill voices in French, you don't know what they're saying. Even if you speak French, you don't know what they're saying. And they had, helpfully, subtitles on a digital screen at the top in Russian, or I think Russian, or maybe it was Ukrainian, but it was in Cyrillic either way. So I was kind of, every now and then I'd sort of end up trying to translate the Cyrillic, and no. So there was 4 acts essentially. I think there were 3 breaks, and in each of the break I would go to my phone and then try and read up about the next act. What's going to happen? What am I going to be seeing? I think you can enjoy it without knowing, but I think it really helps it does help to understand the story, because the songs, of course, are really well known. And I think it's one of those ones where, for instance, especially Carmen, you go, oh, it's that one. So, like, for instance, there's the I don't know what it's actually called, but there's one piece of music which is for the bullfighting, essentially. And it's the same piece of music that they use for the champagne celebration at the end of a Grand Prix race, of a Formula One race. And you'd have heard it before anyway. And then in the intermission, you have the champagne and caviar. So that was quite interesting. I had some caviar. I wasn't drinking, so I didn't have the champagne. It's just really salty. You know what it's like. Yeah. It's just salty, isn't it? And it kind of pops.
It's really ubiquitous in that part of the world. Yeah.
So what I like to do is prevent mm-hmm. is to present. I knew there was a word like that. Present my own personal tips for someone who's going to the opera, specifically in Odessa. I would say, so see if you can, if you think of anything to add, then sure. Please do. So I would say my tips would be read up on the play before you go, because you won't get it otherwise. Carmen's great anyway, and maybe with that you may. I don't know. I still don't think you can understand what's going on. And certainly something like Swan Lake, they don't even sing. You know, it's just like, oh, some white swans, some black swans. Oh, a man in black with like sinister music. He's the baddie. Oh, right, okay, a man in white with, like, you know, happy music. So he's probably the good guy. And, you know, it's a lot of that. So you can sort of see that, but I think it really adds. You'd never guess the story. You would never guess Swan Lake from what you know, from seeing the people dance in ballet. Secondly, bring some decent clothes along. Actually, jeans are fine, I think, but dark jeans, shoes are better than trainers. You if you come in a tux, you'll probably feel out of place. Maybe it's different in the summer, actually. Maybe in the summer, there are more people off cruise ships who may well have tuxes with them, because I think that's people often dress up, don't they, for certain events on cruise ships. The other one I would say is get a good seat, because it's cheap. Yeah. I mean, the cheapest is 20 hryvnia, which is less than £1. It's about 60p or something like that. About 70 cents of 70 American cents or something like that. But they have really heavily restricted views. As I understand it, a lower limit should be about 100 hryvnia, which is about £3. $3.50 to $4, something like that.
When I was there, even the boxes were like £12. It was really unbelievably cheap.
I was in a box, and that's what they were. They were 300 hryvnia, so they were like about 10, just under 10 quid or something like that. So about $12. The other tip I would say, so that's tip number 3. Tip number 4: buy your ticket in advance. I think this is especially the case at high season, and also for certain, something like Swan Lake. Everyone wants to go to Swan Lake. Carmen, I was able to pick and choose my seats. Swan Lake, I literally got the last seat, and that was like 2 days before. Any later, and I'd have had to go as a swan. So they're my tips. Do you have anything else to add?
Yeah, I would say go in the evening. When I went during the day, firstly, I accidentally went to a performance that was really for children, and
Donald Duck, the opera.
It was something like that. It was about forest creatures. It was well done, but clearly targeted at children, and I, as the only person there who wasn't a child or with a child, I felt a bit awkward and out of place. And also, I would say during the day, it doesn't quite have the same romance or atmosphere that it has in the evening. So definitely go in the evening. And maybe take a walk around the area around it before you go in, because it's something really special.
Cool. So what did you think of the food? Do you remember?
Of Odessa specifically?
Yes. Ukraine in general.
So when I was in the children's camp, our food was extremely bad. But I don't think this is probably a fair standard by which to judge Ukrainian cuisine, because, children's camps are probably like schools, and schools probably aren't really the place to form an opinion of the national cuisine, I think you probably have quite a lot more to say on this subject than I do, so what is your opinion?
The food scene in Odessa is pretty good. There's some pretty good restaurants there. In terms of actual traditional Odessan cuisine, I'm definitely not an expert, or even Ukrainian cuisine. There's that game of work out what the menu says. A lot of the menus there is a bit of a thing going on in Ukraine, which is, well, certainly in Odessa, which is glossy menus with photos showing what the food is. And often the food, the photo is usually a really accurate representation. The film Falling Down with Michael Douglas, where one of the things he loses it over is, isn't it comparing a burger to the picture and saying how doesn't look anything like that? Well, it looks the same. You're like, oh, okay, yeah, good. What have I had? Well, I had some dumplings. I can't remember what the local name for the dumplings is, but obviously Central and Eastern Europe, they all have their own sort of particular styles of dumpling. Like if you go to Poland, they have pierogi, and if you go to Georgia, they have, what do they call the Georgian ones? They're much bigger, aren't they? You have like 3. And are they quite bready or something? Oh no, they're not bready.
Khinkali. That's it, Khinkali.
Yes, I thought you were going to go with Sakhalin, which is the former capital of Mongolia. But no, you're right, Khinkali. And in fact, apparently what you're not meant to do, I remember reading this, it says, what you're not meant to do is eat it and then have just spill it all down you like an idiot. I was like, oh yeah, like I'm going to do that. And then that is exactly what you do because it's really easy to do. But I didn't do that. Was a different country again. So
You're also not supposed to eat the bit where the dough comes together. You're supposed to leave that.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It's considered kind of peasantish to finish the whole thing. Although it's lovely and you absolutely should eat that part. But it is considered a bit of a social faux pas.
Well, I'm from the village, so maybe I'm a bit of a peasant. If I'm hungry, I'm going to eat it. I paid for it.
Not to mention, it is delightful. The whole thing is really tasty, but this part is tasty too.
So then there's chicken Kiev, which is probably I imagine that's not typically Odessan. But,
where do you think it's from?
I don't know. Is there a country called chicken? Is it Turkey? Maybe. But that's terrible. I hate anyone who makes that joke or talk about hungry like I'm really hungry. God. So anyway, I have had 2 chicken Kievs already while I've been here, one of which I consider to have assaulted me, essentially. It was at such high pressure, the butter inside, that when I put my knife into it, that was it. It Kieved the crap out of me. And yeah, that. So, and then there's the whole thing of the converting the Cyrillic and menus where they give you the menu in English, but it hasn't been very well translated. And then you're trying to understand, you want the original so you could at least have a go yourself. I was in one recently that had pungent steak, and then in brackets, maybe not pungent. So
how would you understand pungent? Like very.
Well, I don't know. I don't understand why there's a choice. Right, I should have checked at the time. I didn't check, but if you order pungent steak and it's not pungent, do they make you pay the price of pungent steak? So we'll kind of just pay the price of normal steak.
Wondering if maybe when you say maybe not pungent, they're conflating may with can. So maybe they're saying you have the option of having a pungent steak which is not pungent if you so choose.
Oh, that's true. But I still don't know why. What's the pungency? Do they mean heavily herbified? I don't know. I never found out that riddle.
It's kind of a bad thing.
It is, isn't it? Smelly steak. It's a nice place. I didn't order it, and I wish I had, but it's a bit of effort, that, isn't it, just to work out what's going on with the menu description. That was where I got the Kiev squirted all over me, actually, so maybe I should have gone for the pungent steak.
I hope it just genuinely is a very pungent steak. And there's us laughing at their English when actually their English was merely correct.
Well, yeah, I mean, actually I have to say as well, I'm surprised how many people have spoken English. The level is not as good as somewhere like Poland, and it certainly helped. People love it when you make an effort. There are a few countries in the world where people aren't happy to see you make an effort. And there are some places where if you don't, people will just pretend they don't speak your languages. I've been in France and I've had a situation where they won't even try, but if you meet them halfway, then there's no problem at all. And in fact, then you'll find out they're fluent in English. I find in Ukraine, just trying to order, so for instance, I tend to drink like black coffee. So Americano без молока, пожалуйста. And, everyone's happy with that very basic piece of Russian. That's one of the interesting things as well, by the way, because it is actually, even though it's in Ukraine. So we've got this still ongoing war in the Donbass region of Ukraine. And, also, so we've got disputed territory there and Crimea as well. The Crimea. You can say the Crimea, can't you? Because it's a region or an island, in fact. Is it an island or a peninsula?
It's technically an archipelago.
It's a Crimean peninsula. Oh, is it?
Or maybe
okay.
Does it connect on?
I think it might be.
Does it connect on both sides? Because if it definitely connects on one. And if it connected on both, it would be a non-classically shaped peninsula.
If you've tuned in to be educated, you've come to the wrong place, frankly, because We haven't done the most basic research.
Fuck, my terminology was all wrong. I was trying to work out if it was an isthmus or a peninsula or an island. Yes.
I mean, I'm looking at it now, and I think it's a peninsula.
Does it connect on both sides or one?
Well, it connects on both sides, but I think the other side is artificial because it's a bridge, isn't it? Anyway, there's all there's still tensions there. Odessa's not in that region. Odessa's not in some disputed territory. I don't think it's disputed, but it's there are a lot of people there who speak Russian, essentially. So in other parts of Ukraine, you would have to speak Ukrainian. In Odessa, they have both, really. I heard Russian more than anything. I said Odessa. Someone corrected me, said Odessa. But that turns out, then someone else corrected me back when I said that to them, because they were saying, no, that's the Russian pronunciation. You just say Odessa. But I found when I've asked people, what should I learn? They say, learn Russian, because everyone here understands it, and you can use it anywhere else as well. And I think they know that, you're just doing your best anyway, whichever one you speak. And some Polish has helped as well, but using a bit of Polish here, I found pretty useful as a fallback. But as much as anything else, I just go to that normal tactic of started talking English. Hi, like, hey everyone, guess what? We're all going to speak English now because I'm here. It's so arrogant. I hate it, but it's just like every time I feel kind of a little bit embarrassed about it, but that's all I've got. I'm just like, hi.
I think
surprise, old woman working in a corner shop. We're now going to speak in English. You have to meet me not even remotely halfway.
I think it's useful to learn how to say sorry, I don't understand in the language of every country you go to.
I've always thought that is the most useless phrase you can learn in any language is I don't speak the language in that language. Я не говорю по-русски. It's just like they're like, I know. I can even tell from the way that you said I don't speak Russian that you don't speak Russian. I felt strange there actually saying like I don't speak Russian because I did actually say it myself. I'd say I don't speak Russian. Я не говорю по-русски. I'm probably butchering that terribly, but and then I want to add or Ukrainian because it's a strange thing to say in Ukraine. You say I don't speak Russian. You say, well, we're in Ukraine. Why would you say? Do you know what I mean? I don't want to. I don't know if there's any local sensitivities to that, but I don't think so. I haven't picked up anything.
I think it's good to let people know where you stand. You know the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico is called Yucatan because one of the Spanish people who went over asked a local guy what this area was called, and he said, I don't understand, which in his language is Yucatan. So
is that true?
That is true, and it's
okay.
So
that's like that road sign in Welsh, isn't it?
Which one is that?
Have you seen the road sign in Welsh? It was one where someone sent some English to be translated into Welsh to the translator used by the local government, whatever, who the sign department. They sent it, and then that generated an out of office message, and so the person got back an out of office message in Welsh. And of course, not reading Welsh, thought that this was the translation, and then this ended up on the sign. And this is absolutely true. This is, I'll put a link to it in the show notes. This is something where there was a sign in Wales for a while before it was taken down that basically said in Welsh, like, I'm out of the office.
That's fantastic.
So I'll get back to you when I get back to you. So there you go.
That is fantastic. So, there is some utility to I'm sorry, I don't understand.
So what other aspects, what do you remember of, did you take any trains out there?
Yes, actually I really liked the sleeper trains in Ukraine. I don't know how they are now, but when I was there, they were really, this might sound negative, but actually I mean it in a positive way. They seemed really historical. Like everything inside was made of wood. It was very cozy. They had samovars full of tea and leather seats, and which became mattresses and beds. That was really nice. What did you think of the trains?
Well, I only took one. And I actually, well, first of all, you see, this actually, in a way, this encapsulates what I've seen of Ukraine, which is that things that, because I've had Polish people say to me, oh, it's like Poland 20 years ago. And I can see in some aspects, yes, but I think it's more complex than that, because as I walk around the streets right now, there are, I've never seen so many people wearing AirPods. So there's money there, and you see nice cars, and you see nice restaurants. So all of the trappings of, say, Western Europe are there. It's just that the bottom end is, there's still a lot of, shall we say, deprivation? Deprived and depraved are different, aren't they? The one with the eye. And, for instance, so the train I went on was a new train. And it was really comfortable. And I actually picked it because I knew it was going to be new. And so I got on the train at Lviv train station, main station. Very nice, modern sleeper train, sort of 4 beds in a compartment. And they give you all new sheets and things like that. You have to make up the bed yourself. And also it's a feat of minor gymnastics to get on the top bunk. And I did wake up in the middle of the night. I had this crazy dream. I was like... I had a dream that I was in a house and the house was blown away. It's a most terrific gale. And then I woke up and the train was rocking like no one's business. And I briefly got the fear. I was just like, oh my God, we're going to crash. But after a while you calm down, because when the train's just doing that constantly, you're just like, oh, okay. So the train was new and modern. I got the impression that the tracks weren't all that. In, some places, yeah, others no. And then outside of Lviv train station is that sort of wedding cake kind of building, and then outside of that you've got a cobbled car park, and the cobbles are missing in places, and it's all misplaced, and it's all up and down. And then you've got the it's like the concrete sections of concrete where it's all kind of worn away, and then you have the tram terminus is there, and you've got like a turning circle for the tram. And when you take the tram there, the trams are like, there are some new trams, there's some really battered trams. And when you arrive at the train station, because I've spent time in Lviv, it's like rallycross. You're up and down. You think it's gonna derail. Basically, it's all over the place. Now the point of that isn't to say, look at stupid trams. The point is that there are areas where you can see there's been investment, and there are areas we can see there's a lot of investment still needed.
Yep. I totally agree. I think when I was there, the program I worked on, the children's camp, cost 1,000 euros per child for 2 weeks.
Wow.
So, yeah, as you can imagine, the kids I met were very privileged. And you can see a lot of people in... I was only in the larger cities besides that, but certainly in Odessa, Kiev, Lviv, who look quite wealthy, quite comfortable. But I agree, on the other hand, the kind of, there's in the UK, maybe there is like a 1% of the population who are below a kind of minimum and are really desperately poor. But there is a kind of minimum in the UK, which I think doesn't really exist, or if it does exist, exists at a much lower level over there.
Yeah, I think you've summed it up really quite nicely there. Yeah. So at this point, I'd love to carry on talking about this, but I think we've reached a good point to stop. So thanks for listening. If there's anything on here you want to ask us about, or you want to comment about, then do please send a message into podcast@wanderingdesk.com. And if you go to wanderingdesk.com as well, then you'll find the show notes there, and there'll be links to anything that we've talked about. So yeah, thanks for coming along, Alex.
Thank you very much.
Even though you didn't go anywhere, you just stayed where you were.
Thank you for having me.
Very welcome, and look forward to talking with you again.
Great.
Thanks. Cheerio. Bye-bye.
Thanks. See ya.